KETV Newswatch 7, chronicling the stories impacting our community. Stories making a difference. Stories that matter to you. This is KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle.
Once I saw the land, I knew really what we had. Taking it out of my head and giving it to the people that were going to draw it, the conception, that was a little bit awkward. We had to put that down on paper before everybody really understood it. And when it was put on paper, all the ideas that I got from my associates really improved it and made it bigger and better.
And when it's complete, this St. Ignatian Retreat Center, tucked away halfway between Omaha and Lincoln, will be the first of its kind in more than 70 years. Good morning, I'm David Earl, and this is KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle. This morning, we're taking an in-depth look at the Cloisters on the Platte, a multi-million-dollar religious retreat dreamed up and being built by TD Ameritrade founder Joe Ricketts. The 930-acre oasis is in Sarpy County between I-80 and Highway 31. It's nestled in the rolling hills along the Platte River, and as you can see, construction is well underway, and it should be ready for visitors by next summer. Last week, I had a chance to sit down with Mr. Ricketts. We talked in the chapel, which is still under construction, and it's one of the first things we talked about. It's where the retreats in the St. Ignatian tradition and what makes them so different.
St. Ignatius of Loyola lived about 500 years ago. And he designed his spiritual exercises to bring people closer to God. And indeed they do. I've experienced that, and thousands of other people have experienced that. And there is an order of Catholic priests called the Society of Jesus the Jesuits, who have kept that tradition open these past 500 years. They've kept it alive. And the original exercises take about 4 weeks. Very few people can spend that long. So the exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola have been broken down into smaller segments, and they're given on weekends. The retreat here will start with dinner, and then after dinner the retreat starts, and then it's over on Sunday afternoon. And the way that we work it is that when somebody comes that weekend, they usually come back that same weekend every year. But they can expect a different retreat leader, and they can expect a different subject matter. So it's always fresh. And the number of Ignatian retreats in the United States is 27. This will make number 28. This one is different in the fact that it's being started by me. I'm not a priest. Normally, the Jesuits would have somebody go out and start the retreat center. And prior to the Depression of the 1930s, there was a lot more of them around. The Depression put a lot of them out of business. And the last one that was opened here in the United States, I believe, was 1946. So this is something that doesn't happen very often, open up a new one. And the way I got involved in it was I was having dinner with a priest friend, a priest from Creighton. It was about 1987, 1988, and I told him that I kind of was missing a spiritual rejuvenation, a spiritual aspect of my life. I had been raised with a Catholic grade school, a Catholic high school, and a college, but then when I went off to start my career and family, I kind of lost the feeling of having religion around me all the time. So I was losing that spiritual feeling. And I told that to him, and he said, go on a retreat. And I said, oh no, I'm not going to go on a retreat. I did that in high school. It was a very unhappy experience. I'm not going to do it again. But he persisted, and he pushed. And he kind of finally convinced me that I should go make this retreat. It's a silent ordination retreat. I'd never heard of them. And it was in de Montreal next to St. Paul. So I went with a great deal of anxiety, and I found out it was exactly the thing that I was looking for. So I went back for many, many years. Then one year, I couldn't go, so I called and said I would not be able to come, and they said fine. And then the next year I called, said I'm coming back, and they said, well, I'm sorry, we're full. So they had filled it up. They had a waiting list, and they had filled it up, and so I couldn't get in. So then I did a couple of retreats, or I organized a couple of retreats over at the Jesuit Retreat Center near Griswold. And then one day I said, you know, why don't I just build something like this between Omaha and Lincoln. There's enough people here. So that's where the idea kind of started. The more I thought about it, the more I like it. When I first talked to people, they kind of looked at me like I had two heads. You know, it's kind of a crazy thing to do. You're not a priest, you're not a religious. But I had a priest at Creighton and the previous archbishop really encouraged me to keep thinking about it. So we looked for different pieces of land. I wanted it out in the country away from everything, because part of this is the experience of being away and all by yourself. For that, that's why they have a quiet weekend, or you really don't talk. And couldn't find the place, and then Kurt Halverson found this place, and we were able to acquire it, and it's out in the country, but yet it's still easy to get to. And it's in a nice neighborhood with all the parks and the golf course and stuff that is around here. So we purchased this with the idea that we would build this retreat here, and then we went to developing the retreat. Now, we started with the point of view, what are we to achieve? And that is, when the people come here, they need to have the opportunity to contemplate, to meditate, to pray. So they really kind of set themselves apart from the rest of the world for that 3 days. I tell my wife, I call going on the Ignatian retreat my selfish weekend, because I can just be all alone by my thoughts and no interruptions. And then the activities that go on during the retreat is that there's usually 1 or 2 lectures in the morning and in the afternoon. And then at the time, and then you're given a lot of free time to go away and to think about your particular life or about the issues that the director has thrown out. And then we also have Mass, benediction, confessions, and we have spiritual leaders here available for consultations. So usually there's about 4 or 5 people that help run the retreat for the weekend under the direction of the main retreat leader.
So you talk about Mass and confession, but this isn't just Catholic exclusive, right? I mean, anybody can benefit from this, right?
That's correct. This is open to anybody that wants to come. And I think about 30 or 35% of the people that go to De Montrevel are non-Catholic. And so you're welcome to come to Mass, and you're welcome to participate to the extent that Catholics ask that you not go to communion and don't go to confession, but everything else is welcome or not, depending on what you want to do. So I like to think of this really as something that is available to all Christians. I like to say to myself, I'm a Christian, in particular a Catholic. And so we want all Christians really to come. And quite frankly, we would enjoy having Jews come, but I don't think that they would find this particular type of prayer something that would be attractive relative to their own type of prayers. Sure. But they'd certainly be welcome. We've had a number of people here come to work, several, that came up to me and said, Mr. Ricketts, I've kind of drifted away from my religion, but now that I've worked here, I've gone back. And they're not Catholic. So what goes on here is something that's pertinent to Christians, not including any organization, any Christian organization.
How important is it to be inclusive in that sense? To have folks here from maybe a Methodist background or a Lutheran background or a Catholic background?
Well, we really don't know. When you come, we don't know what your background is. So one of the things that we're going to do differently here is that people, since the idea is to sign up for a weekend and stay that weekend every year, a lot of people have come up to me and said, well, you know, I'm going on a retreat with these same people. I see their faces, I know who they are, but I really don't know them. And you know, I'd like to visit with them, I'd like to get to know them. Well, by the time their retreat's over, everybody's ready to head home, so you don't have time. So for an hour ahead of time, we're going to have a cocktail party before dinner, so people that see each other every year and don't know each other can get to know each other. And then you might find out, well, this person is a Methodist or something of that sort. Yeah. But we will encourage everybody to come. The people that are the executives help building this are, you know, I've got one Catholic and the rest are Protestants, or they're not Catholics. I picked them for talent. Yeah. Didn't pick them because of their religion. You
have been visiting parishes around the Omaha Metro and kind of talking about this project. What's the reception been like? What have you been hearing from people about this?
Well, my personal perception is I'm overwhelmed. We have thousands and thousands of people contact us through our website and say, I want to make a retreat or I want to know more information. And I'm very pleased at that. But I do have to tell you, because we also include the women, now that's another story. De Montreville and the other close one is in St. Louis called White House. Those are all for men. Okay. So I just assumed only men went on these retreats. Women didn't do it. So a group asked me to come and talk at their annual banquet, a religious group, and the wives were there. So I gave my talk, and after the thing was over, 4 women came up to me and said, hey, you didn't include us. I said, well, do you understand it's a quiet weekend? Because I just assumed women didn't like to do it because they wanted to have a talk. Their religious experience was communications. Right. I just assumed. Well, I thought they were going to nail me to the cross. So I said, okay. We'll invite women and see what happens. Well, today, 60% of the people that have indicated they would like to make a retreat are females, they're women. So we'll have retreats just for men, 80 men, and then retreats just for women, 80 women. So I'm very pleased that the women showed such enthusiasm, because it would be very hard to fill this place up with 80 people each weekend if I was only going to go male.
Talk to me about the cost to come here. What is it?
There is no cost. We don't charge anything. We do ask for a goodwill donation.
All right.
And I can already see now, Dave, that it's working out that maybe the goodwill donations will cover about half of our operating costs that it's going to take to keep this going. So the other half we have to find some way. Well, on the near term, I can afford that, but I would like this place to last hundreds of years. So we're going to have to find a way to have income. And so we'll explore different ways to find income to keep the Cloisters going.
Well, up next, we're getting a little more personal with Joe Ricketts and learning where he is in his spiritual journey. That and more when KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle continues. You're watching KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle. This morning, we've been talking to TD Ameritrade founder Joe Ricketts about his most recent passion project, Cloisters on the River in Sarpy County. We talked with him in the chapel, which is still under construction, and I asked him what's most important in his life.
Well, the things that are most important in my life right now are obviously to get this place finished and operating. Then I have another foundation concerning education, which is a huge undertaking, and I'm very excited about what's going on there. That's very important to my life. I've got a couple businesses that are very important into my life. So my life is very full. A lot of things are very important, and I really enjoy having all the impetus from these things, but one's not really more important than the other. Yeah. They're all important.
Can you tell me a little bit about the space we're sitting in right now here on this campus? Sure. And what inspired it?
The architecture was inspired by Margaret Mary's in the middle of Omaha. The size of this building was inspired by the number of people as far back as your voice could be heard. In case your microphone didn't work, how big of an audience could you have? Originally, I was going to have 60 people. But then when we went to a church out west, we found out that we could really have a room big enough for 80 people. So I said, we'll go 80 people. So that's the way we got to the 80. Now the speaker is going to have a microphone, and we are going to have a speaker system here, but just in case it didn't work very well, we still don't want to close the place down, and we still want it to work. So we designed this for 80 people. Now each person has a nice chair, leisure chair, one that swivels back, goes sideways, and goes up and down so that they can be comfortable, because they might sit there a half hour or 45 minutes, and you want to be in a comfortable chair. And then each person will have their own private kneeler. So that would be their spot for the weekend. So if somebody doesn't show up, we know somebody's not here. So I tell the people that help me run it, we got to make sure we have 80 people each weekend, because who's going to show if they don't? The rest of it, I appreciated the fact that at De Montreville, there was a lot of windows, so you could see out, and it was just a beautiful forest. And I said, so for the sides, we want to have a lot of windows, we want a light to come in, and we want to open up those doors, and those are nano doors, they'll open in good weather, so that we can let the breezes through and hear the birds and hear the forest and things of that sort. And Then the back part of the church, we just sort of went traditional. We've got confessionals, coat hangers, restrooms, and things of that sort. So that's really the story of this church. The aisles are going to be brick. The areas where we have the chairs, the easy chairs, are going to be carpeted.
Ask a little more personal question. Where do you think you are in your spiritual journey?
I'm comfortable and happy right now. I'm not sure that I look at it as a journey. I look at it as more of a place. And I've always needed to have my spiritual life as important as my intellectual and my physical life. So I needed the three areas, like the three legs of a stool, to really prop me up. So since I've become involved in the Ignatian retreats, I feel like I'm really having that experience of keeping my spiritual life healthy, to make me feel good all around.
When you started these, it was like late 80s, right?
Started thinking about it in the late 80s. Yeah, it was awfully hard to get started.
A lot has changed since then, right, in terms of technology and connectiveness and all that kind of stuff. How important, do you think an Ignatian retreat where silence is so important is even more important in people's lives now because of all of the demands on people's time?
It might be. A lot of people say so. I think we've always had demands on our time, whether it comes at us through an iPhone or a tablet. I don't know if it makes a lot of difference. We do have a lot of ways people can get to us and we can get to them. And I think each one of us, they go a certain extent and they shut it off. Yeah. I know I only allow so much to get to me, and I only go out so much. So I do it relative to my own personal pleasure. Some of the my grandkids, they're open all the time. They're going out and people are coming in. I think they'll kind of outgrow that, and they'll say at a certain point in their life, hey, I want a little bit of privacy, so I'm not going to do everything.
This is obviously a huge undertaking, right? Do you think that this is this a legacy project for you?
Never thought of it that way, but I only do big projects. Everything that I've taken on seemed to be impossible when I took it on, and that's part of the challenge. Yeah. That's another story. That's the entrepreneur story. But this is a big undertaking, and a lot of people really didn't kind of buy into it because they just couldn't see it, thought it was too big. But now that we've gotten this far, of course, everybody buys into it.
Right.
And as far as the legacy goes, I think everything I do, including business as well as my philanthropic, I look as a legacy to my family. So it probably includes both.
Sure. It's difficult to see a plot of land, right, and envision what can be on the space.
Well, it wasn't this I didn't have any difficulty envisioning. Once I saw the land, I knew really what we had. Taking it out of my head and giving it to the people that were going to draw it, the conception, that was a little bit awkward. We had to put that down on paper before everybody really understood it. And when it was put on paper, all the ideas that I got from my associates really improved it and made it bigger and better.
This isn't just a spiritual place, but it's kind of a job creator too, at least at this point.
Well, the building part of it is a huge job creator. I mean, it makes a big difference on the community. Going forward, we'll have a staff, but of course it's a much smaller staff to keep things going. Yeah, it is a job creator, but I never looked at it from that point of view.
Talk to me about the power of prayer. What role does it play in your life, and what role should it play in other people's?
I don't know how it should play in other people's. I can't talk to other people, but I know that prayer has always played a very powerful role in my life. In every person's life, they come across an awkward time, something that is not very pleasant, if even worse. And I think you need that spiritual attraction. I think you need that communication with God, with Jesus Christ, in order to help you get through the crisis. It gives a lot of solace. It gives you a lot of strength to be able to call on some part of your life that will help you get through that particular crisis. And then you can come here and think about those crises, if you're in one at that time, and try to figure out how to get out of it, how you got into it, how you get out of it, and what's the best things to do. The other thing, you can come here and think, who am I? What am I? Why am I here? What's the most important things in my life? What are the least important things in my life? And take time to think through those deeply. And it does change your life. So it's the contemplation, both on what's happening to me here and now and in my spiritual life, and putting those together, that prayer plays such an important part of my life.
Seems like maybe not many people do enough of that these days. Do you think people would benefit from that if the contemplation part of it, right?
Thousands of people have. I mean, the Ignatian Retreat proves it. Yeah. I mean, people have been doing this for 500 years in large numbers, and so it has proved itself. So they will continue. A lot of people may not find it very attractive, and a lot of people may be afraid to ask those questions. So I know it makes me happy. It fills out my needs in my life. And by building this, I'm holding it out to other people that, hey, if you want and need this, it's available.
Yeah. What do you hope people who attend a retreat here walk away with?
Well, I hope they walk away feeling better and have answered some of the important things in their life. One of the things that's already happened, some of the people that have worked here have come up to me and said, hey, I kind of drifted away from my religion, but now that I'm working here, I'm going back. That's really wonderful for me to hear, because I think that's going to fill out a void in their life that probably they were not paying any attention to. And I know once the place is established, I know we're going to have the same effect, because we're going to have the same type of leaders giving the retreats as the other retreats that are experiencing such success, the 27 around the country.
I'll ask you just one more question too, just about the space out here in the land, right? In a lot of the videos that I've seen of people talking about the project, it's all about giving the land back to God, right?
That's part of the idea, yeah.
Yeah, can you talk more about that?
Well, of course, nature is beautiful, and it was God created. So we're invading nature and changing it, but we want to do it in a way that gives praise to God.
Yeah.
It's really quite that simple. As soon as we're done with all this mess that you see around here, you're going to see wonderful vegetation put in, and then we just have to keep it up. So during the time from Monday through Thursday, when we're not having a retreat here, people will move in to do all the cleaning, do the yard work, put it all back in beautiful shape for the next group to come in. So it's not going to look like it's such an invasion of nature when we get it all done. I think it'll look beautiful. It
connects you more to the earth.
I find that I have better prayer or feel better praying when I'm walking through the woods more than any other time. So I enjoy appreciating the beauty of nature as I try to communicate with my spiritual life.
And we'll be right back with some final thoughts. Welcome back to KTV News Watch 7's Chronicle. This morning, we've been talking to Joe Ricketts about the Ignatian Retreat Center he's building near Springfield, Nebraska. And one of the unique aspects of the Cloisters on the Platte is its Stations of the Cross display. It's outdoors, and Ricketts wanted something lifelike, so he went in search of finding the perfect sculptor. But everything he saw disappointed him, so he contacted an artist whose work he admired and asked him to create the stations, but was quickly told that would take a lifetime or longer. So instead, Ricketts has a team of artists around the country working on the project, creating each moment in the last hours of Jesus' life. And as you relive those moments, you walk along a wooded path, even crossing a bridge and a stream before ending at this wall with a tomb. Now, if you missed any part of this show or want to watch it again, it's online at ketv.com. Just click on the menu button on our homepage and look for Chronicle. I'm David Earl. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here next Sunday morning for KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle.